Real-life author note. I'm doing this live reading with the Microsoft Word Read Aloud feature because it's told in the first person and the main character is a woman. I am not a woman, nor can I find one that will do the voice acting. Also, I'm a new creator, so I can't afford to pay $50 to $100 a month for an AI program to read it. Now onto the story. Author notes. As I've been writing and reading other people's stories, I've noticed that they fit on some timeline from the moment the Kingdom of Silvermoon was invaded. My father, my aunt, and a few others all had stories. So, I thought I would tell them in chronicle order so maybe I could start to remember. So, I'll start with my undead Death Knight friend Voryoya. Most of the legends of Azeroth are already written in books, told in inns, and are reenacted in plays, but history is written by the winners. Where would the Banshee Queen Sylvanas Windrunner be if she hadn't liberated herself and accepted her defeat? Where would Varian Wrynn be if he died in the sands of the arena? We, the survivors, some of us are happy that we fell into the background of these great heroes. We can only hope someone will listen to our story, even though we didn't fight our way to greatness. That doesn't mean we didn't fight for our survival. My name is Voryoya Ace. For what it's worth, I am married now, but I can only speak one word at a time. I can write though, so I'm writing in hopes someone will read and understand. I've been able to sing for quite some time now, but speaking I am stopped. For the most part, I choose not to speak, but forming the words without stuttering takes effort. There's also this cold icy chill that comes over my throat, and the sound won't break through my windpipe. So, I've gotten by taking these long pauses to make my point. I can still write, so I'm writing now. Before, while aboard the giant necropolis, the Banshees taught me to connect my words without the pauses, but the words need melody, harmony, or this cold chill will form, take over, and I may not be able to breathe for a few minutes. But that came later, when I was able to form words without effort or without song. I was almost completely tone deaf. But I miss my voice. I miss being able to speak to my husband, to anyone. How did I get like this? Well, if you want to know that, I'll have to start from the beginning. This is a forgotten story of Warcraft. Like most people, I was born human, a child overprotected by my 3 older brothers, my father killed by savage troll tribes that littered the forest to the north before I was born. My brothers say he was a strong man with enough strength to match or break any orc, but the people with him were his greatest asset. They knew how to fight as one with heavy shields that could trap anyone more skilled with blades. That is why we humans beat them, not because we were stronger, faster, or more skilled. Because we knew how to fight as a single unit, but trolls used different tactics. My father and his team were shot down with arrows on a patrol. This was the image my brothers gave to me, but he died before I can remember. I remember myself so strong and full of life. Voryoya Pride was my name, and even as a child I wanted to be a hero like how I envisioned my father, and so did my brothers. So, I was tougher than most girls, I had very few friends, and was more often than not, short-tempered. When I first met John, he was so fragile, soft-spoken, and would cry even when grown-ups would yell at him a little. If there was anyone that was the polar opposite of the image I had of my father or how boys should act, it was John. John Ace had 2 sisters, one older and one younger, Jandice the older and Ada the younger. Jandice knew quite a bit about the arcane, but didn't display it as much as she loved to talk about it. When people would ask her to show them some magic, she would show off some tricks, and for a long time that's what she did, magic tricks, with traps, mirrors, and sleight of hand movements. Hardly anything that could be used in combat, but the other mages did say she had the gift. She just chose to be more of a magician than a proper mage. John's parents were somewhat poor, but once Jandice's shows started getting more and more attention from town folks, she started to get attention from the nobles of the Barov family, and she was adopted by them. With a whole bunch of gold for John's family, of course. John, on the other hand, he was so shy and somewhat afraid of his parents. They said Jandice Barov barely acknowledged them as their daughter, and that he should forget he had a sister. When we were kids, I had helped him when I saw him being bullied by a bunch of girls, but I told him that I wouldn't be doing that again if he didn't stand up for himself. I told him, just get really mad and hit one of them as hard as you can. I remember I saw him getting bullied like he always did, and he looked over at me, and I shook my head in disapproval. I wasn't going to help him, and next thing I knew, one of the girls' hairs was on fire. John ran away, but I never laughed harder in my life. The bully's friends did get her some water. I ran after John. John was crying like he always did, but I told him not to be sad. Those girls shouldn't mess with him again. He wasn't crying because of what he did. He was crying because he was going to have to change schools, and he might be sold to the Barov family if his power developed. So, I convinced the girls that were bullying him not to say anything. But John would have to show me his magic whenever I asked. Even though John was a child, he could kindle sparks of fire, water, and ice at a moment's notice. I had seen arcane magic before, but to see shards of water and ice, or sparks of fire and heat form in his hands so slowly was so pretty. Most mages did it so fast I couldn't really know what was happening. I told John, sooner or later the other mages are going to find out that you have magic. They will be able to feel it, so to speak. Stratholme was a pretty big town, and we eventually told his parents, and since his older sister was basically sold to the Barov family, they didn't want that fate for John. With the money they got from Janice, he was sent to South Shore Beach to an acquaintance of the Barov family that would acknowledge his family and protect his home, Kel'Thuzad. So, I said goodbye to my friend. I was sad and missed him, but I didn't have the drive I do now. We were both children, so when I reached my teens I thought about him a lot. But a few years later, he was back in full mage robes with a proud, strong demeanor. I never realized how attracted I could be to someone. I mean, I had crushes before, but seeing him come back so handsome and capable, women couldn't leave him alone. He swore his life to the people of Stratholme, and despite him now being one of the most skilled mages in town, he was still too young to join the guard. For once I felt like the shy one, but he saw me. Out of all the people in our city, he still wanted to spend time with me and my family. My brothers weren't too happy about it. They were always overprotective of me, which might have been the reason why all my would-be crushes never had a chance. I remember John never even wanting to spend time in my house. My brothers sharpened their swords and flexed their muscles, but John wasn't even fazed by it. Laughed off every joke about mage dresses, and even beat my youngest brother in an arm wrestling match. When we finally had some time to ourselves, he told me how he felt. That he had thought about me every day he was training, and once he got done with the Arcane University, he would marry me. We made love that night, but it didn't seem fair to me that he had just gotten there and now he was leaving again. We spent about 3 weeks together being a couple, and when he was away, he wrote to me about how his life was at the university. But a year after that, both of his parents were killed by highway bandits. He came back for the funeral, and it turned out that he had taken up drinking while at the university. I thought it was because of his parents had just died that he was drinking so heavy, but he told me he had been drinking way before that. His letters were so kind and sweet. I never thought he could be like this. He tried to make an advance at me when he was drunk. He told me that I was going to be his soon anyways, and he tried to hit me with one of those sticks you beat your kids with. I knew I was stronger than he was, but I knew he knew magic and I was somewhat afraid. I was able to take away the stick and kick him to the floor. John threw a tantrum, yelled, and froze my feet to the floor. It was so cold. I had never fought a mage before, but I had fought more boys and men to not lose. I broke out of the ice and clocked him under the chin with the stick. He fell backwards, falling back like a broken wooden doll. I thought the impact with the floor would have killed him, but he was out. I heard a snore from him and carried him off to my bed. I slept in my rocking chair watching him for a few hours, making sure he didn't choke. When he woke up, he was in pain from more of the impact with the floor. I told him, "I'm not marrying you if you think that you're going to own me." I told him that David, my oldest brother, had joined the King's Knights of Lordaeron, and I could easily join as well. I told him that my mother was happy that I had decided to marry John, but if this is what married life is going to be like, I would take my chances killing orcs, highwaymen, and trolls for the king. John cried just like he did when he was a kid. "Both of my parents are dead. How am I supposed to act? And now you're the second woman to have beaten me in a duel," he complained. "At least you knew them both, you know. You know that my father died before I could remember. So I never really knew what married life was like," I told him. John apologized for what happened and promised he would never use magic on me again. He didn't walk as proudly as he used to when he first came home, but it was more like we were kids again. He had no idea of my skill with swords and duels. I at least showed him how to use a single-handed blade, and he showed me everything his master Kel'Thuzad the Demon Slayer showed him. I know John would never make a pact with demons, but he knew how to summon them, but not control them. It wasn't a complete nightmare though. I did get to test my steel on demons, but there was one he could control. Well, it didn't try to kill us. A flaming horse, not a dread steed with horns and black scales, but with fire from its mane and tail, but an actual arcane fire horse. John told me that this horse will let you pet him, but he won't let you ride him. I thought its flames would be hot, but as I approached my hand the flames subsided like steam or like water on a frying pan. Most of its coat was red as a sunset, but it had one yellow spot from the top of his head to its mouth. The rest of the flames subsided as I touched the horse's face with the rest of my body. The horse looked almost completely normal. There was a complete loss of mane and hairless tail, but he looked like a completely beautiful chestnut breed. I completely forgot that a few minutes ago John had just summoned him. John looked at me in shock. How? How did you do that? John asked. Love is the key, John. You just have to listen with your heart. Without asking, I jumped on his back like I would any horse. Does this horse have a name? I asked. Master called them nightmares, and even he couldn't ride one of these like you are right now. He would need to summon two, each on one foot. John explained. Nightmares? I said in disapproval, no, you can't call him that. How about Helios? It means the sun. John shrugged. Helios turned around toward John, sprayed him in the face with frost and water from its mouth. I patted Helios on the side. I wonder if he'll wear a saddle? Helios buckled and rose up on two legs. I knew that he wasn't happy about my last statement, so I jumped off before it could knock me off. John said one word, dismissed. And it was gone, in a mess of flames and ice. It hurt like 100 bee stings in the area as it hit. But I knew this wasn't John's fault. I knew I was playing with fire, and now I was the one burnt. John took me to a healer, but I was still bedridden. I needed to wear bandages in the areas the frost fire hit me. You're lucky, you know? I've seen Kel'Thuzad use those to set entire forest on fire. John explained. I grabbed John, Helios. He's not some projectile to be cast into a wooded dummy. He's a mage just like you. John nodded. I'll try to remember that from now on, he said. By the time I fully recovered, John needed to go back to the university. I received letters from John saying that he was able to summon two more mage horses and sent me drawings of them. One was white and blue, and another was purple, so I named them Avalanche and Violet. Helios eventually let John ride him, but he didn't listen or go anywhere that John wanted to go. I wrote back to him and told him that there were shamans that could ask the elements for aid, and I told him to think of his relationship with them like his relationship with his horses, not a skill that is grown with repetition. After that, the people of Stratholme started hearing more and more about the war with the Orcish warlock clans, then demons, and then disease. The borders of Stratholme were strong. There was no way they could bring an attack to our city, but many soldiers were sent away and never came back. I wrote to John that maybe I should join the guard. Not a full-fledged knight, just enough to defend our people. John wrote back saying no. That he wouldn't join the Kirin Tor station because he would be sent to Kalimdor. He would join the Silver Hand as a soldier, only a 2 days ride away. He said not to join, not because I didn't know how to fight, but these new enemies were riddled with disease, and I couldn't fight that off with a sword. But if I must fight, take up my brother's offer and join the Knights of Lordaeron. I knew how skilled those knights were and how heavy their armor was, but their service was to the king, and they never saw much outside combat. So I was torn. I could defend my people here with my own sword and be married, and free to have as many children as I wanted. Or I could join the knights and leave my people to their fate, but be closer to my lover, but also our relationship would have to be kept a secret. I started writing letters to my brother and started training with the heaviest weapon I could afford. My brother taught me to use my fist and sword and shield. So, every technique I did with a two-handed sword was somewhat improvised, sometimes clumsily depending on how tired I was. I remember my mother trying to show me how to dance with a stick and ribbon, and I was somewhat surprised I was able to do a lot of the same movements with a steel chain. So, I attached a chain onto my sword. I was able to spin my sword around over my head and whack the training dummy's head clean off. That drew a bit of a crowd. I was a natural when it came to dance. Dancing with a chain and sword was pleasing and fun. Once I heard music, but I knew I was going to need armor sooner or later. I couldn't afford to dance, spin, pull, and push in heavy armor. So, the days I spent in armor, I only trained in the normal boring way, ate, slept, and if no one was looking, I tried to sword dance. My mother was somewhat disappointed that I had taken up swords over dancing, but once I told her that I was joining the Knights to be closer to John, she said I was just like my father. He wasn't supposed to get married either, or so she let it go. My brother came home to take me to a training camp, and when I saw him, I was so happy I passed out. When I woke up, I felt like the overtraining was finally taking its toll. My brother said I was deathly ill. I could not go to Lordaeron like this. Every knight had their own healers to help them fight, but their service was to that king and the knight that would protect him, not to a family member. The healer said, even if he were to heal me on the way there, I wouldn't make the trip. Better yet survive training, but if I stay in bed, I should recover. He said he came all the way to this commoner city to find a promising knight, not some sickly sister. My brother wasn't too happy about that statement. He slammed the healer into the wall. She isn't a sickly sister. She is the promising knight, and we're not leaving until she is cured. The healer tried to regain some composure. That's not what I meant, he said. I came along to cure simple wounds and maybe poisons, but didn't you smell it when you came here? She needs rest, a proper diet, and if you want a speedy recovery, I'm going to need herbs. All of these things I don't have. My brother put him down. They rationed out grain a few days ago, I said. The healer shook his head. No, empty carbs are not going to fix you. If anything, it will make you worse. You need water, meat, vegetables, and a very big bedpan. I can do my best to nurse you back to health, but your brother is going to have to buy me the supplies I need. But I do have this. The healer pulled a large metal canteen. Nothing, never mind. It's silly. He put it back in his robes. If it will cure my sister, let her have it, my brother said as he tried to grab it. My brother reached for the canteen, but the healer pushed his hands away. I got the recipe for this tonic from a bear when I was on Kalimdor. He said a bear sold it to trolls as a cure-all. My brother repressed a laugh. A bear? Now's not the time for jokes, and if it's for trolls, why do you have it? The healer smiled and repressed a laugh, because 1 drop of this to any alcoholic beverage will get any human shit-faced drunk. It's made from 10 different reptile and insect venoms and a few poison plant roots, he said, laughing. This isn't funny, Jacob. My sister could die if you gave her that, and a bear. Do you think I'm a fool? You're telling me you learned this from a talking bear. I guess the next thing you're going to tell me is that a giant turtle told you the meaning of life. My brother kneeled by my side. Well, not like that I'm not. It was actually more of a panda. Talking bears are furbolgs, the healer said. My brother just looked at him. Man, you should see the look on your face. I couldn't help but laugh either. Vorioya, you think this is funny too? This is not a laughing matter, my brother demanded. Well, if it can fix me, I don't see why I shouldn't take it, I stated. But come on, a talking panda, that's just funny, I finally said. Yeah, about that, trolls can recover from any wound and can even regenerate from torn-off limbs, but they're not free from disease and sickness. Chin, the panda, said it would put the trolls in a death-like sleep, and in 3 days, they were cured of any illness that threatened their lives. I keep some with me if there is ever a time when your brother is slain. I would have the perfect possum remedy, the healer explained. My brother looked at him questionably. Have you ever tested it on anything? The healer half smiled. Rats died. Dogs died. 1 horse recovered in 1 day. Humans, only a single drop, but a full amount could kill her. But I know the people in the city are sick. I can feel it in my bones. Maybe I could buy some rounds and it will cure them. I mean, we'd all have a pretty good time. My brother crossed his arms and thought, save one shot for my sister. But we'll test drops of this remedy at the local tavern. Kalimdor, you know I will never fully understand how people can actually live there. Can you imagine if we actually packed up and moved there? The healer laughed and shook his head, right? What was that guy thinking? But fate is a strange thing. I had completely planned to sell this to local taverns, but if it's a cure-all for humans, it will make me rich. I think I was meant to come here with you. My brother let out a sigh. If it cures my sister, I will have to agree with you, but that's all I care about. Wait, what are you guys talking about? Why would we move to Kalimdor? I asked. Some wizards or sage or prophet said we should pack up and move to Kalimdor. He was probably just crazy. My brother answered. Yet war and evil has come to our lands, the healer said. Our fathers destroyed evil once when they came through a dark portal. Now it's our time. They left a shot for me, and I put it under the floorboards and wrapped it in cloth. I wasn't trying to hide it. The remedy sitting there by my nightstand made the whole room smell terrible. Wrapping it in cloth helped, but it was still faint. So, they tested it. I never heard so many cries of drunkenness and singing coming from one place. I needed rest, but I couldn't really sleep with all that noise. When my brother and the healer Jacob came home, they were singing, "We're going to be rich," and passed out on the floor. When they woke up, a few of my townspeople were dead from alcohol poisoning, and some were still sick, but a lot of them were completely cured and felt that a good night of partying was just what they needed to get back on their feet. When my brother and his healer recovered from their hangovers, they were debating whether the cure would actually fix me. There were a few people that had died that night from one drop, but not all had recovered. My brother decided to take the safe route with enough bed rest and a proper diet, and for a few days I was able to walk around my house and prepare my own meals. Then the unthinkable happened. I was woken up to the battle horn sound through the whole city. We were under attack without warning. But when I looked outside, I didn't see any orcs or demons killing our townspeople. They were wearing the same armor my brother wore. One of them shot a crossbow arrow at me, but I moved before it could hit me. I was still wearing a purple nightgown and I couldn't put on full plate armor, but I could at least grab my sword. I ran downstairs and Jacob the healer ran through the unlocked door. The tonic, where's the tonic? I told him, wait, what's going on? He looked frantic. Arthas, our prince, he and his knights, they're killing everyone. Your brother tried to explain to him that he and his men weren't infected, but Arthas killed him anyways. Don't you see he won't stop until everyone in the city is dead? The crossbowman fired an arrow at Jacob's back, and he fell to the ground dead. I was still armed though. While he was reloading, I plunged my sword through his armor and kicked him out the front door. For a while I just stood hoping they would pass my house. What killed the soldier? This doesn't look like a wound from an undead or demons, and why hasn't this house caught flame yet? Someone loudly demanded. I tied a really long chain to my sword and tied the other end around my wrist. Well, I could fix that. These demons do use swords, you know. The guard did as he was ordered and lit a torch. I opened the door and threw my sword at the soldier with the torch. It nailed him in the neck, and I dragged him into my house as fast as I could and pulled out the sword. The soldiers around screamed out as they saw their comrade fall and drag. I hid behind the wall in my house. A very skillful attack, woman, someone said. Arthas, was she wearing a nightgown? One of the soldiers said in disbelief. Arthas, was it? I said, Prince Arthas, I'm not infected. I was sick for a few days, but I've made a full recovery. You don't need to kill me or the healthy. Quite a few of us have recovered as well. Come on, Arthas. She's just a girl. If she isn't infected, we could use her in the war. One of his soldiers said. Have you eaten any of the grain while you've been here? Arthas asked. Not lately, no. I answered. But you did eat the rations, yes or no? Arthas asked. Yes, I finally said. I'm sorry, but I can't take that risk. Put down your weapon and I will grant you a clean death. If you don't surrender to me and my men, we will go into your house and cut you down. Besides, you already killed 2 of my men. Arthas demanded. Any of you take one step into this house and your next will be in the twisting nether. I shouted. I heard them all stop in their tracks. What is your name, woman? Arthas asked. Voryoya Pride. I shouted. Then I will let it be known that you fought and died with honor. He claimed. Men, bring me her head. Wait, my prince. She's just a girl trying to defend her home. We all have wives at home that would do the same if our homes were invaded. I thought at the time Arthas wouldn't listen to reason from me, but maybe he'd listen to one of his own men. I signed on to join the fight against demons and orcs that wish nothing but war and slavery. Maybe she's infected, maybe she isn't, but if we kill her, know that will make us no better than the orcs that invaded our homes. We could just walk away, and if she does turn into an undead, we will deal with it when the time comes. For now, let's just walk away and deal with the larger problem at hand. I looked outside. This soldier had his hands spread out between my house and Arthas. I never knew how big Arthas was. He looked like he could knock over this whole house just by slamming into it. The other soldiers looked at each other and agreed. You're smart. What the heck are you doing with all them? I shouted. I saw him look back at me and laugh. And a second later his head was completely gone, smashed like a red pumpkin. You men all know how dangerous this woman is as a human. As a undead, think of how many more of us she could kill if we don't do something now. I will go in there myself if I have to, but when I come out all of you will meet the same fate as him. Arthas smashed his hammer onto the dead soldier he just killed. I ran upstairs and grabbed the tonic, and jumped out the upper window and ran to the streets. The soldiers shot me with crossbows but missed, but Arthas came charging with his hammer. When he was just within striking distance, he spins 360 degrees and strike for my body. I backed away in the nick of time and slid my sword to the back of his knees as he tried to recover his hammer. He fell, landing flat on his back and head. But more of his men showed up. I ran away from them, and when I got a good distance, I dropped the sword on the floor and spun the sword around over my head. It hit a few of the soldiers, but when it made contact with their armor, it pinged and stopped me from building up speed. I can tell it was stinging them, but I needed to take some of these guys out. I stopped the spin by slamming the sword and chain on the floor. It was a complete miss of any of Arthas's men, but it made a loud sound that made most of the men flinch. Where did she learn to fight like that? One of the soldiers asked Arthas as he helped him recover. Men, fall back. This one's mine. Sometimes improving dance and swordplay is the best way to win a fight. I won't hold back this time, Voryoya Pride. Arthas stated. Arthas held his hammer with 2 hands and walked forward, protecting his face with the butt of his hammer. I pulled the sword by the chain and put it in my hands. Then you will die, I yelled. I said it almost out of breath. I regained some composure and threw my sword at Arthas. He blocked, knocking it to the right. I used that momentum with the chain to strike to the left, blocked again. With every strike, the next one came faster. I never knew it, but my mother's dance lesson proved more useful in this fight than my older brother's teachings with swords. I could feel every strike of the sword and chain, and I moved with the rhythm of the dance. I could remember all the music, and I felt I was moving to the beat of a song. But it was having no effect on Arthas. He was almost dancing to the same beat, blocking every attack of my spinning blade almost like a waltz, and held his hammer almost like it was a lighter woman. Finally, the blade broke in half. Arthas looked at the remains of the broken sword and looked at me. My turn. Arthas screamed in a creepy loud way. He charged toward me like he did before. This time he aimed the hammer at my face. I ducked this time, looking for the opening he left open before, but he hit me with the back of his weapon. I backed away, and he actually drew blood. I touched the side of my head. You still think I'm infected? I asked. No, but you killed too many of my men to let you leave here alive, Arthas stated. I finally had a moment to take it all in. The areas I grew up and played in were burnt. The people I knew were dead. The houses and shops I would go to were looted. Arthas had killed my brother, and for what reason? Because a few people got sick? Arthas, have you taken a good look around? This was my home. Do you really think I won't kill as many of your people as I can? Arthas half smiled. Why do you think I'm choosing to do this now and not later? You think I want to keep watching my back my whole life? I wrapped the rest of the chain around me. I realized this wasn't a fight. This was a dance, and I spun the loose end around. Come then, prince, defend your murderous people. Arthas spun his heavy hammer and circled me. I was somewhat surprised that he could spin that hammer while doing that same 360 strike he would always use, but this time it was coming overhead. Still too slow, his hammer slammed into the cobblestone and stuck. This time he left his head completely open, and I wrapped the chain twice around his overgrown neck. I could hear him choking, and I whispered in his ear, I will let it be known that you refuse to listen to reason. You refuse to walk away from someone who posed no danger to you. You killed women, children, and even your own men, and in the end, it was a woman in a nightgown and a chain that took you down. I felt the burning pain of an impact sting on my back, and I was knocked to the floor. I heard Arthas's gasp for breath. I felt a painful sting from a cold metal-spiked shield as I tried to recover. And then the demon curses that fell on me like 100 bee stings. I couldn't see or feel. But I could feel my life slipping as I fell to the ground. One of his men took my change purse from my gown, the chain around my waist, put it into his backpack, and passed the coins around to 4 oddly dressed men. Don't kill her yet, I want her head. Arthas said. Your Highness, you're hurt. Let me heal you. One of his priests said. The priests healed him and the wounds on his face and neck closed. Thank you, priest. That is much better. This woman fought honorably. She deserves a quick death and to be remembered. I won't let you take my life. I yelled, and I swallowed what was left of the tonic. It tasted just as bad as it smelled and burned my throat as it went down. I felt it ooze down my throat, and I tried to throw it up, back out. I saw Arthas and his men hold their noses as I breathed in their direction. Then everything went numb. I fell to the ground and breathed as hard as I could, feeling the tonic burn my lungs and coughing it out. I felt myself slipping. I didn't know if this would cure me or kill me, but it felt like it was killing me, but I couldn't let him do it. I heard Arthas as I slipped away. So, in the end, she chooses the cowardly way out. Leave her. I don't need her skull to decorate my chambers. And he walked away. That stuff is still on her teeth. It smells worse than the undead. Move the body someplace away from our men. I heard someone else say.